Well, one of the things that happens for all of us is that incarnating into this reality that seems to have so many categories, the divided mind, creating categories of something that's spiritual and something that's secular and something that's good and something that's bad. And the reality is it's all only one thing, and that one thing is consciousness. And out of that, realities arise. Because we're such powerful aspects of this creation, and each one of us carries within us the power and the potency and the stuff of creating realities, for us to be deluded into believing in categories, the separation and categories of spirituality, materiality, an apparent other, keeps us caught up in transactional interactions with reality and with apparent others. So we have the opportunity in this Sangha specifically, and in all of our own devotional, alive and vibrant, happy consciousnesses, we have the possibility of coming home to realizing the oneness that is what's true. And oneness gets, it's always being upheld, right? It's all one. Well, people don't typically experience that. I'm one, and I think you think you're one, and then there are all these ones around. But the reality is that we are all participating in this consciousness, this powerful creative force that we call consciousness, awareness, and that within that, there are actually no divisions. And so we don't have to go into a category of spirituality and secular life. We don't have to go into a category of working and then playing. Aliveness can arise, and in that aliveness, we are experiencing the potential that doesn't arise whenever we have resistance and limitation, whenever we are caught up in the distortion field of our woundedness. In this group, we do a very specific modality of our technology of consciousness, that the 6 steps to freedom process that uses a trigger to find out what it is that's been hidden from you, that you're believing about yourself, that got installed well, probably in the first 6 months, but at least in the first 6 years of this incarnation, and that created a distortion field, like a lens through which you perceive reality. Some of my favorite quotes that point to this, one of them is Anna Eastman's statement, poetry. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. Another one of my teachers said, reality is in the identity of the beholder. And so we're all in this reality that we created, believing that everybody else shares it. And so when one of us shows up and is unkind or impolite or whatever, then we believe that everybody else feels the same way about it, or that they are in error, right? But nobody lives in the same reality until we wake up to our true nature. So this Sangha and this teaching has to do with waking up to our true nature. We use awakening and human design, the human design specifically describing and beginning to understand the way the vehicle, the body-mind unit, functions in this reality. Right? But with the overarching awareness that I am not this vehicle, I am the awake awareness in which the vehicle, the body-mind unit, and all activity arises. So we start to understand some of the perhaps priorly unexplored ways in which we do create our reality. Oh, but it's not, it's a frequency game, but that frequency depends on our identity. It depends on what we believe to be real fundamentally about ourselves, which is the childhood wound. The experience out of which came a conclusion by each one of us. I don't matter. I'm not good enough. I'll never be the one. I don't get what I want. All of these different facets of limitation that occur in early childhood get installed and get repressed. And then in this kindergarten model that I use of how we create our reality, it creates a lens, a distortion lens through which we see the world. Now, the information on that distortion lens are all of the information are the ideas and the experiences out of which we reached these self-conclusions. I don't matter, I'm not good enough, I can't do it. It's not fair. All of them will carry to some degree a frequency of victim. Because as little children, shit does happen to us, right? I mean, it happens. And the error is, the unavoidable error is our conclusion about ourselves. So as we use this tool, the 6 steps to freedom process, we start to shine the light on what it is that's been operative, because it's very subtle. You can, one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Rupert Spira, uses an analogy of, if you're in a snow-covered world, you're in the Antarctic, say, and you have on orange glasses, you'll believe you live in an orange world. Well, the same thing is true. What the lenses that we see reality through, we see other people and instances of activity in the world, groups and politics and all of that. We see it through the distortion field of our own woundedness. And so it's a world that will always show you that what you believe about yourself, or the polarity of that, which also occurs, is what's true. Everything that you see through that distortion lens will prove that what you already believe is true. Or, as I was pointing to just now, which gives this a kind of the polarities that our minds are created, the polarities that our minds do create will have both ends of the stick. We can point to the fall, eating of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. And so now we have a mind divided, and we have these polarities. And so when we pick up that stick with that early wounding, we also get the good end, right? So what this typically leads to for most of us is confusion at some point, because we'll actually get the part in the play that we wanted. We'll actually get the gift on Christmas morning that we wanted. And so good things happen, but all the time, because of the human mind that's fear-based, there'll be a concern, there'll be a doubt. It's like, my big sister's going to take it away from me, right? Or I'll never get what I really want. Or even when we're getting everything that we believe would be the solution to a lack or the problem that we have, we are believing that we never will get it, or that if we get it, it won't last. Does this ring true for people? That's a question. Yeah, so we're caught in a mind divided. This mind has been running the show through the distortion field of the collective conditioning, which also creates a lens. That collective conditioning has to do with money, power, and the bigger things, but all of us are functioning in regard to those through our small conclusion that created us as a person who is at the mercy of the collective. So now we add, I don't think I'm being very clear today, but now we add to our own woundedness, I'm not good enough, a collective idea that we're responsible to God or to the political realm or the IRS or to our friends or to something out there. And so we're inadequate here because of our own wounded conclusion. And now we're dealing with a world that is demanding or needing other things from us that we don't feel we have. We feel inadequacy. This is what creates us as an identity of being a person. And for a person, there's always that my definition of a person or an ego is the one that has to get something or avoid something to be okay. And so we notice these internal motivations in us, and they may be very subtle, or they maybe have been around for so long that we don't notice them. And so we find ourselves involved in activities to try to get more money or to get more love or to get something, right, in order to assuage what we had installed, the conclusion of the wound very early on. I'm not good enough, or I don't matter. And so this lifetime becomes a pursuit of what I always say, what I don't need, that I believe will make me happy. This lifetime becomes a pursuit of trying to get something to assuage the installed distortion of our own self-definition. So that's the perspective from which I want to suggest that when you start on this path, this awakening path, and all that means is that you become aware of who I am and the distinction between that and what I have. What I have is a body-mind unit to act through, but that body-mind unit is identified with in conclusion, I'm not good enough, I don't matter. And so there's an entire me here, right? But awareness shines, awareness is right there. This is awake awareness that reveals to us who we think we are, what we think the limitations are. If we back out of identification with the body mind, if we back out of identification with our conclusion, I don't matter. Now we are aligned with awareness and seeing exactly who we are. I am the awake awareness in which all reality arises. When that lens is skewed by my idea that I'm not good enough, when that lens through which I perceive that awake awareness is shining through, I've installed the conclusion that I'll never have what I want, or whatever else of the limiting belief that occurred in early childhood, that is unavoidable because you don't incarnate here without the belief that there's something to get or something to avoid. You don't incarnate here without a belief in fear. This reality is both a polarity and based in the frequency of fear. And when we get here, whatever we're bringing in that magnetizes us into this incarnation, then that begins to operate, and then we have the next volume, the next edition of probably what we've lived many lifetimes. But this time we come in order to shine the light, to know who we truly are, and to wake up to that. When you start on this path and you have the least little glimmer of light, then it's really to hunker down on that, to really start to stay steady. When you have a problem, don't let it go by without reminding yourself that you're triggered. Don't let any discomfort, discombobulation, anything that you don't want to have happen, don't let it get by without using the work that we do in here to clear. Because this is the way home. The way to who I am depends on me not just getting by with, well, she didn't really mean it. Well, you were really triggered. Use that, right? So this is a call today to really not let anything go by, be really committed to coming home to your true nature. There's a line in a poem by T.S. Eliot, I think from the Wasteland, and he says, we all end up returning home and knowing it for the first time. And so we are on that journey to the coming home to what we may have had many lifetimes without access to that. But we're conscious now, we know we have what it means to know something is to be one with it, to start to know. I know who I am, and I know what's standing in the way of me experiencing that. And to make this commitment to yourself, this is the way we change the world. This is the way, with the work that we do, there is a frequency now available in reality that has to do with love and acceptance and connection and the possibility of heaven on earth. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Pali. So we'll now be, the floor is open for questions, queries.
Yeah, if you're on Zoom, please, you can raise the hand button or raise your hand and I can spotlight you. Yeah,
Holly, would you repeat that last line that ended in heaven on earth?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe, right? Or it might be even better.
That's right. That could be true, Carl. Our participation in what we see as our spiritual path is the contribution we make to changing the reality. And the way that that works is as the light of awake awareness shines, and I know myself as that, that's a frequency that's offered into reality that can be aligned with, that can be magnetized. It kind of points to the morphogenetic field theory that many of us who were around in the 80s knew as the 100th monkey story. Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and so I always say we should have t-shirts that say, I am the 100th monkey.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, so what I was pointing to is the contribution you make energetically, frequency-wise, to one's own enlightenment, right? That's exactly what's true. You see, the way that we are the same is in our true nature. We are all the same. We have different ways of expressing through our body-mind unit. And that's the fun of a 3D material incarnation reality. Yeah? But when we are clear about the awareness that I am and the reality that arises in that, and we don't find within ourselves any resistance or the need to correct or the need to control things so that they will look better in the moment. But we come to this as we come home to ourselves through our ability to absolutely trust, move into the field of allowing that everything is working in ways that are not our business. Our business is to express from the highest frequency of our true nature. And when we do that, we can depend, we can relax into the truth about how reality arises, and that's the highest possible frequency. Who we already are is the frequency of love, allowing, and peace. Everything that we aspire to, we are already that. And that's the contribution that creates heaven on earth. I don't think I said the same thing. No.
questions, thoughts? Got an almost hand?
They're almost there.
Okay.
I'll save it for when I see it.
Okay.
There was that.
Yeah,
I had a trigger yesterday. I'm helping a woman who has macular degeneration and driving her around and helping her with odds and ends. So the last couple of days, I've been helping her with some forms for the IRS for dissolution of our corporation that was one of those areas where I'm looking at trying to figure things out for her. And not in an area that I particularly enjoy, but know that I am capable of doing. So that was Monday, I guess, and then yesterday, so that was what that was. Then yesterday, helped her, ran errands, and we go to the post office, and one of the addresses that she had addressed, I looked at it because I wanted to get receipts, and I realized it was wrong. And I was frustrated, I found myself frustrated because we had, it felt like a blur from the day before of all the details and exactly which piece needed to go there and have it written down, so it was all ready to go. And so in that moment, I was looking, did figure it out, and then I wasn't fully present and I fell over her dog. Yes, it wasn't fun. And I'm okay. It was just a recognition of you're not present, you're not in a high frequency. Got it done, felt a little hurried. I didn't want to, I wanted it done. And I would love to have any kind of clarity. We had a conversation in the car about, how that felt and that type of thing. I would like some clarity from you of anything I can do but it felt like a little bit of your conversation was the inadequacy. So when there's a piece of, there would definitely felt a piece of inadequacy when it comes to dealing with what I'll call the bullshit of dealing with IRS forms. I'm sure no one else knows what that means and how in that arena, any of those arenas. Anyway, so anything to help to where if I'm in those shoes, whether it's myself or another person and anything in that arena where I could be more present with more alignment of soul, spirit.
Yeah, well, it's we have seem justified because of the things that clearly are bullshit. In being resistant to them, but it never serves. I mean, I know what you understand about the whole thing is that we can have very subtle resistances. And they may not be as obvious to us, but the least bit of dysphoria, the least bit of that would be, if it was spoken, would be, I don't like this, I don't want it to be this way. The least bit of that will get our attention.
Yeah.
The dog will be there in our way, or the hole in the whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, it's the possibility, and you have total, I know you do have total availability of this, is that do whatever you're doing, do not have an opinion about it.
Yeah.
To not have a judgment about it. It's just what's in front of you to do, so that filling out the IRS form for this woman who's lucky enough to have you it doesn't mean anything, right? Typically with officialdom, when we are caught up in it for whatever reason, we'll bring up old stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of it can be a controlling parent or mate or whatever, and the feeling of being imposed upon. So through breathing and allowing and at the level of threat, it's like, I can't afford to be pissed off about this, right? And so we can allow, just let it be. It's an ongoing thing. Yeah,
Peeling the onion.
exactly.
Just do a little better every time.
Yeah. Yeah. the reason that anything irritates us or we are annoyed about it is because at some level or another, which may not be available to us in that particular moment, it's about us, it's about one of our wounds.
Exactly the point, it's about one of the wounds, so, since it brought up, frustration. And I knew I was triggered with it because of the, not only a little bit of frustration, but also the seeming fatigue at that moment that came along with it.
Yeah.
You know, so, and my sense was probably, the feeling of inadequacy
Right.
to deal with something above,
That's
because it's
right.
like that,
Yeah.
so, thank you for just the ability
And
to
that
have
is
the
the childhood
conversation,
wound,
the
yeah.
childhood wound of
Mhm.
not feeling up to the task of what that was, even though the quote unquote reality of who I am knew very well I would be
Right.
able to do it. So, thank you for just the floor to have that conversation. Here.
Yeah, if you see it as a wound that was installed that has other facets to it, you can do the 6 steps on it for sure. You may already have. Welcome, Deborah. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Sorry, as most of you know, my work makes me be late. So sorry about that.
So happy to see you.
So Emily has a question here.
And Emily is Emily.
Emily.
All right.
Hi, Polly. Hi, everyone.
Hi, sweetheart.
So I've been really working hard at looking at all of my triggers, every single one. It's obviously like a 24/7 job at this point.
We need assistance for that, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. But it's easy for me because my triggers show up physically in my body. So I will know right away. And something happened recently where I moved to a new state about 3 years ago, and I met a new friend, and then that new friend has a friend already. And that other friend just felt like she didn't like me, right? It felt like she was kind of threatened by me or jealous of me because she didn't want me to take her friend away. I don't know. So it took me like 3 years to figure this out, but I realized this had been happening my entire life. I would meet somebody. I was like the new girl somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
I would meet somebody, and then the friend would just hate me. And it happened. It was just, I mean, I made a list that this happened to my entire life. And it was like this big moment where I'm like, oh my gosh. And it occurred to me, it wasn't because I was unlovable or unworthy. It was because some kid didn't want her best friend taken away by the new girl. Like it had nothing to do with me, So it was like really good that I saw this and recognized it. But here I am at almost, 50 years old, and I'm like, it's still dealing with it, but when I realized this, I felt really good. And then I went to Thanksgiving at this person's house who's not very nice to me. It's fine, but I can tell, and I don't really like, spending that much time with her either. We both probably are jealous of each other on some level. But I thought maybe with the realization that then I would feel very comfortable in her presence and it would be okay. And it was like, okay, now I know what's going on. It really has nothing to do with, me. But it didn't go away. And then I realized with a lot of my triggers, like I look at them, I know them, I see them, and then I still go out into the world and I'm like, oh, still triggered by that. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to go from knowing's half the battle to like not feeling like not enough.
Right. Yeah, well, what you're suffering with, what we always deal with, is not about anybody else. And it certainly is, it shows up that way, like being the third person showing up that disrupts something and then not being appreciated or included. Oh, but you need to go back to step 2, and whatever this trigger is, like being excluded or not appreciated or not valued, whatever that feeling is, right? And because where it is about you, and if it's happening to you, it is about you. This is the good news, right? where that is about you, you have access because something happened to you early on. I don't know what's your birth order in your family?
Second. I was second, but my mother had moved away when I was 9. She moved away and left me with my dad for about 3 years, and then my
Well,
life apart. So I have some abandonment stuff from back then.
right, but most of the time, what happens later in our childhood is a repeat of an early experience that often has to do with birth order or even the birthing process. So, but because you came along second, sounds like familiar with the story you're telling me, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's interesting. Although my brother and I didn't grow up together, we grew up separately in different homes.
Well, it's the very earliest thing of there can be an entire reality in which it's energetically experienced as there was somebody here before me.
Hmm. Could it
And
be?
I
Could
have
it?
a feeling that's where you've gotten.
That's really interesting. Wow. Yeah, I never thought of it like that. And you don't think it has anything to do with being abandoned when I was 9?
No, by 9, typically, we already have our wounds in perfect order. But by 9, we've gotten all the hits and the conclusions and, but it's not that it didn't exacerbate an abandonment wound from earlier. We tend to continue experiencing our earliest wounding in different circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I feel like there was from age 20 to 40, I didn't have any female friends because I just stopped. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I only had male friends, and that seemed to work better for me. And I still have issues with female friendships. Like I'm uncomfortable. I feel like I'm going to be like left out or abandoned or, you know, something like I just would rather not have them. And so
Yeah,
it's been a problem my whole life.
right. Yeah, so what is the feeling is I'm gonna be left out or
Yeah.
abandoned,
Be
right?
be left out. I'm going to be
That, yeah.
excluded. Yeah.
So using that feeling and just free associate, what's the earliest experience of that feeling? I'm gonna be left out. Just what memory comes up for you?
These two girls in the 4th grade that just called me tag along. They refused to, they just said, called me names. They left me out. Yeah,
Right.
that.
When that happened, you concluded that meant something about you.
Hmm.
I must be fill in the blank. What did you conclude?
I must be pathetic.
You
I must,
must,
yeah, pathetic or
you're right, exactly. I'm like,
hmm.
you don't have, you don't, I suspect it was in the category of I don't matter. I don't have, I'm pathetic. That would be perfect.
Right. Right.
So
I don't.
that's what the lens we're talking about, Emily. That's the distortion field. And so looking through that, which it's, when I say it's a lens, I'm talking about contact lenses. There's not any distance between us and them. They're like the way we see, everything. So that is giving you, that creates information whenever the circumstance has the same kind of dynamic in terms of who's involved, like another woman, like a situation where you could be left out. And the way you avoided that was to just have male friends, right? So that this piece that it had happened before the 4th grade, but that's a good memory for you. That's what you concluded something about yourself, which is, I don't matter, I'm pathetic, I'm not going to be included. And that's what's operative. That's the way you see the world.
Yes.
Now, the light that we want to shine on that is to see that that was unavoidable conclusion, but it was never true. It was the conclusion of an 8 or 9-year-old girl
Hmm.
with stuff going on in a school or wherever you were.
Hmm. So when do you think I
Right?
stop? When do you think I'll stop feeling like that girl? Because even though I see it, I still can't. I still go out in the world and I still feel it's like, do I have to
That's
look
right.
at it, like all day long? Do I have to just keep looking at it?
No, what we're doing is we're shining the light on it so that you can see that it was unavoidable, but never true. And
Mhm.
that's a very kind of slippery distinction, but it gives you the toehold into, of course, that's what I concluded, but I'm the one now that can see that was the only thing that made sense to little Emily, but
Mhm.
it was not true. It didn't mean anything about you.
Got it. Yeah, so looking at it more objectively outside.
Yeah, to see in clarity that, I mean, because, see, once we install something like that, I don't matter, I'm pathetic, that it gets installed, then we're in such resistance to that conclusion that it's operative in some very powerful ways. So again, it will be the way in which we see the world. So what we're wanting for you today is to put more light on that. You're the light that's shining on that conclusion.
Hmm.
You are not the person that got created out of that conclusion.
So I just keep,
You're the awareness of it. If you can see it, you're not it.
right,
Good. Yeah.
right. And if it doesn't go away, the feeling, the pathetic feeling that I have
Right.
go away, then I just keep looking at it, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Well, the other thing you can do, and this sometimes is helpful, I talk about putting that little girl on your lap and saying,
Mhm.
sweetheart, I'm the one you've been waiting for. You thought it was those other girls and that guy, right? But it was me and I am here now. Yeah, that's the childhood wound work that we can do up close and personal. It's like in your heart and in your mind, you put that little girl on your lap and say, I'm here now. I got this, right?
That, yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, sweetheart. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Polly, you briefly touched on something that I wanted to explore more. About, we have balance in our lives. But then we have the collective consciousness. And in particular, I feel very blessed and balanced in my life. But I have been carrying some sadness about the election.
Mhm.
And I realized that a lot of it is my perception that others are gonna be hurt. It's not fear for myself,
Mhm.
but it's perception that the disadvantaged, et cetera. Um, and I asked Lama this, it's like, how do I deal with seeing injustice? Is basically
Mhm.
that, you know.
Yeah, the thing you just said at the end, how do I seeing it that way? Perception is what we're always dealing with, right? And as when we have the perception that something shouldn't be happening that's happening, we are participating in it happening. It's like we can, it's the field of allowing is to realize that our resistance to anything is what empowers it to continue. And that would include Trump, by the way.
Okay, so we step back and we don't, obviously, you know, big thing, nobody's reading the news, nobody's on Twitter, we're stepping back, we don't wanna see it. But there's an inadequacy, I feel, that I'm not able to help.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question, Carla. Do you believe that who you're being energetically makes a difference to reality?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where we give up on ourselves. My clarity, the love that I have and the clarity that I have and the frequency of that clarity is the greatest contribution we can make to a shift in the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, resistance is that's the intersection where we can most be effective in having things become what we would think of as better because any resistance to anything gives it more power. So it's incumbent upon us not to be in resistance, but to be in clarity, to see. It's not that we're trying to be some kind of Pollyanna, which is my maiden name, but no, it's not that we're ignoring anything. It's just that we are present, we are seeing, but we're seeing without distorted lenses. And in that frequency is a high frequency, and it can change realities. Frequency is what's creating realities, right? So if we are caught up in resistance, we're participating in what we don't want. A kind of detachment is not to participate. Energetically, we're always going to be participating, but you know, it's like if something comes in front of you specifically to do that's on behalf of what you think the problem is, you'll know it, and you probably have done it.
So in our resistance, we're making the frequencies unharmonic.
Well, we are participating in having
Participating in
things
that.
stalled.
Yeah,
You see, this is resistance. See, it stops everything right there.
yeah.
And the very thing we don't want, we're resistant to it, feeling
then it
very
has
good
to-
about
yeah.
resistance, yeah. But it's not that we go into agreement either. It's just that we are present. Detachment is a very high frequency, actually.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but there is a time of like celebration that feels so good.
Mhm.
And now there's a time of mourning that feels so not good.
Mhm.
So is that like a human, just part of being human?
It's a part of being wounded.
Yeah.
It's because the celebration is our natural expression of exuberance and possibility, regardless of what's happening. The celebration is our breath and our heartbeat and our connection with each other. But for any of us to believe that we can see what the whole picture is a fool's errand. That's not, it's not our job. Our job is to stay at a high frequency that comes from clearing out our woundedness, clearing out the beliefs about ourselves that are not truth, because then our frequency starts to elevate. And then we are participating, like I said, in a new heaven and a new earth. I mean, it's so contrary to what we were conditioned to believe that we should do if we're good people. I understand that.
Yeah, so we don't fight against the darkness and the
That's right.
sleaziness and
That's
all
right.
all that,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, when I was a little girl, I loved going home with my mother's housekeeper. I lived in UCLA, the upper corner of Laura, Alabama. And I would go home with my mother's housekeeper on the weekend, and I would get to go to the Black church. Remember, this is in the South. This was in the 40s. I think I was 6 or 7 years old. And I was much blonder then than I am now. And I got to go to the Sunday school with my housekeeper's child, who was about my age. And in the Sunday school, the wonderful Aunt Jemima kind of teacher was up there, and she was holding forth about how we're here to serve others. And I just kept listening, and I kept listening. And pretty soon, I was very shy, and you know, and here I am in a sea of what I thought were beautiful Black people, and I felt like I was like transparent or something, you know, because I was so blonde, right? But I raised my hand. She's like, "Yes, Miss Patty, what you want, honey?" I said, "Ma'am, what are the others supposed to be doing?" You see, it registered for me that she was promoting something that had no basis in reality. If everybody's here to serve others, somebody's missing. You know?
What did she
Something is not taken care of.
Yourself.
Exactly. And the body takes the hit, and the reality takes the hit, because present on one's own behalf, we are powerfully endowed with the possibility of a celebratory, happy life. Because in reality, there is not the polarity that our mind insists upon here. true reality is not based in polarity. That was the fall. So that little 7-year-old girl ended up being an 85-year-old woman sitting here talking to you about the first bravery she ever had in her life, which is to ask a question in the Black Sunday school. If everybody's here to serve others, what are the others supposed to be doing?
What was her response?
I don't remember, but I have never forgotten the question.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that they loved you.
Yeah, I they, too, yeah, for sure.
So we have about 5 more minutes. I want to see, did your hand have a full yes?
It feels too, for me right now, first time exposed,
Okay.
needs family stuff,
All right.
so I'm not ready to
And
do
we
that.
can work on that, Hermine.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, for
what I
sure,
wanna do.
of course.
I just wanted to celebrate your answer to bring it back to the point of celebration being in reality, and that to let go of the polarity of any of the feelings other than the true reality of what is. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, Star, I appreciate it. Yeah, to realize that if our resistance is partaking in what we don't want, it's actually holding it there. We don't have to be in agreement, but we can allow everything to occur. And from that allowing frequency, we're participating in the best possible outcome.
Mr. Fred, our friend Fred,
That's my baby. Hey, boy.
neighbor.
Hey,
Hey.
aloha. I was just thinking of something with regards to the election that Alan Cohn shared a few weeks ago. He invited everybody to look at what thoughts are we voting for? What thoughts are we electing to hold on to? And I just thought that was a brilliant question with regards to processing these last weeks.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate Alan. Yeah.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, just last minutes here. Anybody have anything else that wants to be spoken or named? Any last words from Miss Polly?
Yeah, stop believing what you think. It's probably a bad neighborhood. But we're so accustomed to believing what we think. But if we are with ourselves on our own behalf, we're at a much higher frequency. The thinking is typically based on the wounded identity. And so as we go about the work of clearing this wounded identity, we don't want to be caught up in our mind. It's a bad neighborhood.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Robert.
So we don't believe what we think, we just don't believe anything?
No, we are present in this moment with what is. It's we have been programmed to uphold the rational analytic mind, which means that we are run by what we think. But
Right.
there is more intelligence from our heart and our connection to our lives and what our heart wants. The heart wants connection, the heart wants peace. But see, the fall was out of our mind, out of our heart and into our mind. And that is the place where the rational analytic, that's where we have our discussion, you and I, about there's a way that it should be and it's not that way, right?
Right.
Yeah, so what the mind wants us to believe is that without it, we would be at loose ends, that nothing would happen and nothing good would happen and progress would be halted in its tracks. But the reality is that life is alive and well, and we are connected to that through our hearts. When we're in our minds, our tendency is to want to correct or change or control something. And that frequency is underpinned by fear. So it ends up creating not what we want.
That's good.
Do you think that morality is under fearful essences?
Yes. Yeah, all rules and regulations are based in the need for control that comes out of being fearful. Because from our true heart, from our nature, if that were I mean, it's clearly it's a inside job. It's for us to value what it means to allow, what it means to be connected, what it means to say yes to life and whatever is. And so, when we need the 10 Commandments, and when we need the rules and regs, in order to have anything work, that's based in fear, and it will end up being complicated. Fear complicates everything.
Wow. Thank you, Pali. All right,